G'day and welcome to episode 19 of the Van Build. Today I'm going to be working on doing the Dishy mod, Starlink Dishy mods. So let's get into it. Oh, the other thing that I probably need to mention is that Starlink doesn't use standard pinouts on its RJ45. So the terminal connections, the connections that I've got to make here are non-standard connections. So I've just got to swap some of the wires around inside the RJ45. So kind of got to keep my wits about me with that. So I'll be modifying cables first and testing and making sure that everything works before I go cutting the dishy down and all that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to modify a standard Ethernet cable. The reason that I'm going to start there is because if I stuff this up, it's no big deal. I can throw it away and start again. It's been a few years since I've crimped RJ45 plugs. I'm pretty sure it's like riding a bike. It's been a while. I've done probably hundreds of them in my work over the years, but it's been some time. So I'm going to start with something that's low risk before I move on to chopping the cable for the actual dishy. And also just a shout out to Everlanders. This diagram is on the Everlanders YouTube channel, one of his videos on modifying the Starlink. He's one of the people who, in particular, I've taken my inspiration from. So check him out. I'll put a link in the description below to the Everlanders channel. Start by unceremoniously cutting the end off of the cable. And of course, here's a track for young players. Don't forget to put your parts on before you crimp the plug on. So put the boot on. So I'm just checking one more time. My colour order looks correct. I've got it pushed in nicely. Wires are pushed right up to the end of the plug. So I should be good to crimp that now. So I'm just going to cut the Starlink cable now. It's kind of a moment of truth, I suppose. I'm going to cut it so that I've got enough on here that I can crimp an RJ45 plug on here and get it working again, just in case everything goes pear-shaped. But the plan is that once I've cut this off, I won't be using the Starlink router at all anymore. Okay, so my first attempt was a fail. Didn't work. I've gone back to the Outback Comms documentation, and I've realised that I think I was using the wrong pinouts. So we're going to give it another go. So I'm still having no joy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to crimp a plug onto this and test and make sure that the dish works with its standard router. So I have I've connected the Starlink router through an Ethernet joiner like that out to the dish, and according to the app, Starlink is now connected and online. There we go. So that's a good sign. inside the van. This is why I couldn't do the ceiling, because I needed access to here where the cable's going to come through. So once I've got that done, bring this cable through and run up to where it's going, then I can finish off these ceiling boards. Oh, I'm up to the part now which is, I guess, got the most potential for disaster, but it's a critical part of the job, so got to approach it with care but also a bit of bravado, and cut the back off the dish now, so wish me luck. I'm trying to think of a good way of doing it, of cutting it. I haven't got a router attachment for this. And here's what I've come up with to cut the back of the dishy. I've mounted my router onto a piece of timber, which gives me a little bit of extra reach without these parts fouling and getting in the way. Got a dovetail bit set up, and then I've got two pieces of 18-ish millimetre timber, which I should be able to run the router along and just cut into the edge of the dishy. So let's give that a try and see how it works out. Well, so far so good, seems to be working all right, so I'll just continue on with that. Alright, well, I think the next thing for me to do is to put it together enough so that I can test it and make sure that it still works. So we're back online and up and running, so it's great. Unfortunately, I have to stop for now, so it's going to be back to it tomorrow. Okay, it's the next day. Today it's a bit cooler and a lot wetter, which is not really conducive to what I was hoping to do today. That kind of changes things a bit, but I need to finish this Starlink mod anyway. We've got no internet until I get that back up again. At the moment we can't have it outside because it's not waterproof, so need to get the cable terminations done and the dishy mounted in its box. Obviously I can't mount it on the roof in the rain, so just have to wait for that part of it. So I've had a bit of a frustrating morning in some ways, and it turns out that the Starlink Ethernet cable, it's actually a Cat 5e, and it uses a stranded conductor, and it can be a bit of a pain to crimp. And so the crimp that I did on the end of the cable coming out of the dish there was no good, and so it wasn't connecting. Even though I metered it out and it metered correctly, it showed connection, but I think it just wasn't giving a good enough connection, wasn't able to carry enough current, and so the dish wouldn't boot. So I've re-terminated that, and the dish is now booted, and now showing a connection. So let's just do a speed test and see what our speed's looking like. So I've got my little patch cable made here. This one will go from the router to the PoE. So at the PoE end, it's got the Starlink swapped 568 connection. At the router end, it uses a standard 568B connection. So I've got some black heat shrink on that end to remind me that that's the standard end. And now it's time to test it out, and hopefully it works. If it doesn't, I've got problems because I've run out of plugs now. Well, it's been another frustrating day, if I'm honest. Didn't get as far with the Starlink thing as I would have liked. As far as I can get, I've ordered more plugs. I'm going to need to do more work. But I also can't terminate the cable here in the van that I've run. Just in here, we've got the Starlink cable for the dish running in through the roof, and I've also added this cable, which is going to be for, at this point I don't have any plans to add actuators for the solar panels, to raise and lower the solar panels, but if I decide that I want to in the future, it's going to be a whole lot easier if the cable's already there. So I've run this cable through the roof, and I'll bring that up to where the switch panel is going to be, up in this overhead cupboard. It can be supplied from there if I do add them, so I can seal that up. And then this evening I'm going to get the final sealing boards up. At least then I feel like I've done something today. Just going to leave extra length on this cable in here. If I do add actuators, I'll probably want to pull more cable through out above the roof than I've currently got up there. So different people in different parts of the world have different numbers of seasons. It's something that a lot of us don't kind of necessarily know. Here in Melbourne, some people think we have 4 seasons, but there's actually about 8. So we've had already winter, of course. And then we had a few weeks ago the spring of deception, where I was in shorts and t-shirt and it was lovely and warm. Now we're having second winter, and I was just checking the Starlink settings and noticed that the Starlink dish was heating for snowmelt, because apparently it's cold enough that the Starlink thinks that maybe our dish might be having snow build up on it. So there you go. It's not really that cold here, and it doesn't actually snow here, but we're halfway through spring and the dishy is heating to stop snow build up. So I've had to go into the settings of the dishy and tell it never to use snow melt mode. It's crazy. Anyway, back to the build. Before I put this next board up, I thought I'd better stop and just have a look at the fan. There's a fan that's going to go here as a Sirocco fan, a swivelly, angly fan. It's going at the foot end of the bed so we can have some airflow over the bed in the night without using a lot of power. But when I took a close look at it, when I ran these cables I didn't have it yet, so I couldn't take a look at it. When I took a close look at it, I've decided that it needs to mount here, and I'll bring the wire out on this side of this board, so I've got to get this over to the other side. So I'm just going to use a rounded bit on the router and just route a little bit of a groove in this piece of ply here to get the cable through on the other side. Okay, so back end lining more or less complete. Obviously I still have to do the doors and finish off around the outside of the doors as well. But the main wall lining is done, so time to move on to the front end. The weather really is not making this easy. Board here is just dry fitted for the moment, while I thought I can work out how I'm going to frame around the window and tidy it all up. So, but it's pretty much the end of the day. I feel like it's been a fairly good effort today. I do have a lot of catching up to do because I have fallen behind my schedule. Decided to put this up this evening, because then tomorrow it'll be gone off and I'll be able to carry on. Beautiful. Well, it's a cold and windy Saturday morning, but the show must go on, so we'll continue on with lining this wall and then move into doing the doors most likely. Well, there's still a long way to go, but I think it's worth pausing to celebrate at this point. That's all the wall lining done. I've still got to do the doors, obviously, and I need to do this bit behind me here where the cupboard over the cab is, but it's looking pretty good. I'm pretty pleased with how things are coming along. So this window frame hasn't worked out quite as I had hoped it would. It gets kind of shifted in the night while the glue was going off. I probably should have made sure I clamped it a bit more securely than I did. So there's a bit of a gap down here and a lip around here. Part of that's because the wall is curved and the piece of wood is not, obviously. The plan is to have a trim piece that will run around the edges and cover this gap, so that's not an issue. I did that on purpose so that it wouldn't squeak. But I need to trim this back. So I was thinking I'd use my trim router to do that, and it will actually get in there. But my concern is that this actually flexes, and so it may actually move as I'm trimming. So I need to stop that from happening. So I think what I'm going to do is I'll pop some brad nails in through the side into the ends of the boards. It should lock everything from moving around, and then I'll hit it with the trim router. So it occurred to me as I was preparing to do that with the flex that there was and the bow on these boards, that if I pushed and brad nailed, I could probably actually get things pretty close. And that's where it's sitting now, close enough that when I put the trim pieces on, I think it'll be good enough. I'm going to dry fit this piece first, these two pieces, fitting them at the same time, because I think it would be too hard to do it otherwise. I'm just going to dry fit them and then take them back off, put the glue under, just checking my gaps. Check and make sure it doesn't foul as it opens and closes. Excellent. It's a lot of work in shaping these boards for the door. This one, for example, had to be tapered in two directions with the corner cut out at both ends to fit around the lump in the door. Got there though. It's just not going to be a fast job doing the door. So you might rightly be wondering what on earth I'm doing here with this huge gap at the bottom. It's because the frame of the door sweeps out, which kicks this board out. So to keep this frame the same thickness all the way around, I'm going to bring the frame that comes down here down in and have it butt up against this. There's probably better ways of doing this, but I don't know what they are. This is what I could come up with, what I could think of. Well, I'm pretty pleased with that effort. That's my first time ever trying to frame around a window. I think it's come up alright, so pretty happy with that. A couple of times I've alluded to having more time to work on the van in the near future, and last week I mentioned that we have a deadline for getting the van finished. So I guess the big news is I quit my job, that is. I've quit my job so that I can work full-time on the van to get it done. So that's what I'm going to be doing between now and Christmas. Hopefully a couple of weeks before Christmas the van will be finished and we'll be able to do a couple of short trips in it just to shake it down, test it out, see what things we need to change. So that's kind of the plan. I really would have liked to get a bit further with the van this week than I did, but the Starlink issues that I had getting the parts and then getting the modifications done and working have meant that time that I would have spent doing the lining and getting that finished I spent more time on Starlink than I really would have liked. I've got more connectors coming for it, which should arrive tomorrow, and then hopefully I can get those bugs ironed out. But in the meantime, I have plenty to do in the van, so thanks for joining me. That's it for episode 19. Great that you could come along, and don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Let me know what you think. Tell me, is there a better way that I could have framed out that window? I don't know. Let me know what you think. Love to hear your comments.